Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Before I begin this video and you'd like to use OCD Recovery's coaching services, please reach out to phil@ocdrecovery.com and he'll get back to you as quick as he can. So yeah, today I wanted to speak about simplifying OCD recovery, feeling confused about OCD recovery, because I've seen a few things in the WhatsApp groups lately, and there's some confusion about whether people are doing recovery right, what's a compulsion, what isn't, am I doing X, Y, Z wrong, this, that, etc. So with OCD, it's very easy to complicate, right? It's to some extent, OCD is quite complex. There's a lot of ingredients that go into the final recipe for OCD recovery. You've got you sitting with discomfort, reassurance, exposures, avoidance, belief work, fear, discomfort, sitting with discomfort, compulsions, rumination. There's so many different things that do go into OCD, right? But to simplify it, and this is just going to sound so oversimplified, but bear with me, right? The fact of the matter is that there is a core fear driving all of those things, that there is a core fear that is linking all of these behaviours and, beliefs, etc., all together, right? So that is at the driver's seat, which needs to be targeted, which needs to be broken down, which needs to be addressed, and everything else is just the byproduct of that, right? So with OCD recovery, it's understandably so, we want clarity on whether we're doing it right. Am I taking the right steps to recover? Am I doing it wrong? Am I doing a compulsion which I don't think is a compulsion? Am I avoiding something? Am I chasing an exposure, right? So somebody in the group chat made a good point the other day. So they were scared of checking an Instagram profile out of fear of seeing if they had a baby with this person, right? So they're saying that if they check their profile, that's a compulsion, but if they avoided looking at their profile, then that's an avoidance behaviour, right? And it's a very very good question, but the way to answer this is, right, there isn't a line in the sand whether what's a compulsion and what's avoidance, right? Generally speaking, you don't need to have this absolutely bolted down to a T, which is, a big element of that is fear of fear. Although there is no line in the sand, right, there are things that you need to look at, and it's different on a case-by-case basis, right? So am I performing this act to be rid of discomfort? Am I performing this act to be rid of something, right? Am I avoiding looking at this again to have discomfort, to avoid facing my fear, right? If you need to look at it from that angle, right? And those compulsions and avoidance behaviours are going to be a byproduct of that. So what am I really scared of? Am I doing this because I'm scared of discomfort, which I've just said there. So you need to really look at why you're doing the things that you do. And then generally speaking, in different cases of OCD, there will be some people who have more compulsions towards something. There'll be other people that have more avoidances towards some things, right? So you genuinely need to go towards what you are, scared of and what you're resisting, right? So not everything has to be a compulsion. So if you're say in the case of this person, you're scared of doing a compulsion to look at this profile. Looking at that profile is not necessarily a compulsion, It's like saying, well, I've got a chest pain, I'm going to go to the hospital. That's not necessarily a compulsion. There might actually be a genuine issue there. It's like with looking at that profile on Instagram. There might, for all you're checking to see you haven't got that association with that person, right? Fair enough. It's when it gets excessive, and it's when it becomes repeated, it becomes a habit over time. It's where you're doing it to find relief and be rid of discomfort. And obviously having OCD, we need to be careful of that because we've got a genetic brain disorder, and, snowballing down into the path of compulsions we do need to be careful of that. So it's why we say balance, right? Balance is so key. There's nothing inherently wrong with, going to the doctor, going to the hospital, or, checking that profile. But it's when it's when you're doing it repeatedly over a period of time to gain relief, right? That's when you're going to get trapped in the cycle, and that's when OCD is really going to, start pulling the strings, right? So yeah, like I said before, whether it's compulsions, avoidance, chasing exposures, am I avoiding looking at this person, or am I avoiding this situation? And, is doing that going to stop me from desensitizing to my fear? Is doing that going to stop me from, overcoming my fear? Well, again, you're only scared of something, right? And exposures are not part of the journey. Sorry, they're not all of the journey. Yes, they are part of the journey. But by no means all, we tend to give a lot of importance to exposures, right? You tend to find that with exposures, if you're doing that same exposure like thousands of times and you're not getting the relief, then, it tends to show that more belief work is needed, right? But again, it's different on a case-by-case basis. There's no real line in the sand between whether you're chasing an exposure, whether you're avoiding, whether you're doing the compulsion, right? At the end of the day, all of that comes down to is fear of fear, fear of being stuck forever. What if I'm doing compulsions forever and stoking the OCD fire? What if I'm avoiding this thing and stoking the OCD fire forever? What if I'm missing compulsions and, missing out on that discomfort and therefore reinforcing my OCD and being stuck forever, right? So we do really need to be mindful of that. But yes, it is dependent on a case-by-case basis and what's going on individually, right? So we need to just try and simplify it all. At the end of the day, we're scared of something, right? And you need to really target those core fears, what you're scared of, right? And align those behaviors to that. So the core fears are rejection, self-rejection, societal rejection, fear of being stuck forever. They're the main ones that tend to drive a lot of the OCD cycle. So it really, if you're feeling confused, it's important to go back to basics and just really look at your core fears. Sometimes they're not always necessarily easy to see by themselves. Sometimes you might need an extra pair of eyes. Sometimes you might, do a bit of reading or watching some of our YouTube videos, and you might see, that's where I'm getting stuck. But yeah, it can be confusing, OCD recovery, because of so many different elements. But it's important to simplify that you're only doing certain things because you are essentially scared of something, right? And we don't it's almost like we always want a perfect path to recovery. Say you had an injury, say you had like a back injury. There's never going to be a perfect path to healing your back. There's going to be setbacks. You might take a little bit longer than expected. It's very rarely you're going to get a straight path to recovery with these things. Back pain, maybe even like cancer. There might be setbacks along the way, and the same things for OCD recovery. You're not going to get that perfect step-by-step, case-by-case blueprint into what you need to do. But you don't need to have it nailed down like you think you do, right? So just try and keep it simple where you can, because confusion and analysis paralysis can just hinder us in the end, right? So yeah, thanks guys, and I'll see you in the next one.